Bug Pokemon are often seen as the lowest of low in terms of power, but I can guarantee that they would rule the world. Think of how common Bug-type Pokemon are, how many there are, how often they appear, and how quickly they reproduce and evolve. Swarms of Beedrill who will drag you back to their hive for food. Volcarona who will spread its scales to burn up all the oxygen in the area. 8-foot-tall Scolipede that move faster than a car. The soul-stealing Shedinja, even the life-draining bodybuilder from beyond the stars, Buzzwole, who is far more common than you might believe. I've wandered through every region, barely escaping with my life to bring to you why Bug Pokemon would rule the world. Hi there, I'm Krillic, and I've been excited to make this video since I made the video on if you could survive the terrifying depths of Pokemon's oceans. That's how long I've been sitting on this one, over a month. And things are looking pretty bleak with bug types too. At least you'd think so. These are Pokemon that make up 8.98% of the Pokédex currently, and that's not including Pokemon that are technically arachnids, like our Scorpion Drapion, who will be included in today's analysis. So insects, arachnids, a little bit of Golisopod in there too, because it's kind of in its own category as well. But bug Pokemon on average have the worst stats across the board. Specifically, they are ranked number 18 out of the 18 types in health, 17 in attack, 14 in defense, 18 in special attack, 17 in special defense, and 16 in speed. They are bottom runging it hard. But what people fail to think about is how common bugs are in the Pokemon world. They're one of our first encounters. They often evolve without needing to battle and are on every or nearly every single route in every game, in caves and especially within forests. And they evolve fast, just like our real-life buggy friends do. This is not a mistake, this is an adaptation, because if you're going to have a short lifespan or die often, then your job is to adapt quickly, evolve quickly, and have babies at ludicrous speeds. Pop them out. I am talking baby factory levels of reproduction. And the worst part is, your mind should already be thinking about how dangerous one of these Pokemon are, let alone the 5, 10, 100 of them that group together and swarm. So today we will simply go through every line of Pokemon generation by generation, and as we go along, we will learn just how dangerous every single bug-type Pokemon is, and while we're at it, you can think about, which ones could you actually survive an encounter with? My other goal here is to not just show you how terrifying these bugs can be, but also how incredibly valuable they and real-life insects are. I won't be considering Mega and Gigantamax Pokemon with one exception, as I want to keep this focused on Pokemon we would run into in the wild. With that out of the way though, let's begin with Generation 1. Caterpie is not much of a big deal, though a problem we're going to run into often is that every single bug is massive. This little caterpillar Pokemon is a foot tall, 0.3 meters, and weighs 6.4 pounds or 2.9 kilograms on average. It's essentially the same as picking up a Chihuahua or a Yorkie. Odie, get over here. This is Caterpie. This is my dog Odie, but this is Caterpie. Hi, would you like to say hello? It's nap time for her, even though all hours are nap time. Anywho, I'm gonna put this Caterpie-sized dog down, or is it a dog-sized Caterpie? Either way, I'm gonna put it down, we're gonna keep going with the video. Caterpie is even noted to grow quickly, shedding their skin time and time again. They spit out plenty of silk, which it will drool out by accident. Have fun cleaning that up if you're its trainer. It eats hundreds of leaves a day, its favorite food specifically being the vermilion flower, and once it's had its fill, it'll wrap itself up in a neat little cocoon. The most dangerous thing, though, about a wild Caterpie only exists if you smell the horrid stench that they will expel if they consider you an enemy. I would be fine as my sense of smell is incredibly poor, and I often get stuck with trash duty because of this. And yes, caterpillars in real life, amongst many other insects, can release that pheromone. Actually, one thing that comes to mind is not a caterpillar releasing the pheromone, but tomatoes. If a tomato is actually being eaten by a caterpillar, there's the chance that they will release a chemical into the air, essentially, and it'll cause the caterpillars to cannibalize each other. And then that, smell, or that chemical going into the air warns all the other tomatoes, like, hey, start producing this caterpillar cannibalizing concoction chemical that you have. Do it. Watch them destroy themselves, and we get to live to see another day, which is wild. Now, once it does evolve into Metapod, it's not a threat in the slightest. This cocooned up lad is about as threatening as a baseball bat, and I say that because while it cannot move, cannot eat, and does not defend itself, it can withstand some incredible damage before it cracks open and its vulnerable innards are released to Pokemon such as Pick-a-Peck. So, you could probably get away with swinging it at other Pokemon if you're in dire straits, though I don't really recommend that as you might get taken down by the Popo. When it does evolve into Butterfree, we start having some serious issues though, as even simply being near it might result in your death. The wings of Butterfree are coated with poisonous scales that easily fall off continuously as it flies. If inhaled, it results in several status conditions. Using this powder, it will defend Caterpie from bird Pokemon. This powder also repels water, enabling it to fly and gather honey even in rain. Imagine having a farm in the Pokemon world, or being a florist. You would love to have Butterfree because they're great pollinators, but you'd have to wear protective masks around it in order to prevent your own untimely demise. And it's not even trying to kill you. Imagine having asthma in the Pokemon world at that point. Now you might be thinking, oh, they can't be that common if they're that big, and that's when I remind you of the anime episodes that shows these Pokemon migrate the same as regular butterflies and in massive numbers. And while yes, by comparison, there are far less Butterfree than butterflies in a migration such as this, even in the one shot that I use of the anime's retelling of the story, there are 62 Butterfree. 62! Nearly 3.5 foot tall, 70-pound butterflies flapping around, crop dusting everything that they pass over, and you best hope you keep your windows closed or you will not survive. Luckily, these are fairly easy to avoid and are not aggressive unless you are stealing their sweet, sweet pollen, nectar, or sap. In which case, prepare yourself for a dry scooping of Butterfree scales just going right down your gullet. The Weedle line. Now, this line should be a no-duh to everyone, but let's cover our bases, because it's another foot-tall creature, but the stinger on its head and tail are said to be 2 inches or 5 centimeters long. If you don't have a ruler by you, I want you to look at your thumb, because on average, the adult thumb, male adult thumb specifically, is 2.5 inches. That means that this stinger is already longer than the longest insect stinger that we are currently aware of in the real world, which belongs to the cow killer ant. And my god, that's a heck of a name. Anywho, the stinger of a cow killer ant can be upwards of only 1 inch long. Weedle here doubles that. As a side note, the cow killer ant does not in fact kill cows, nor is it actually even an ant. It is a wasp. And it is not venomous, as it doesn't really serve as a real threat. Just so painful that people were like, oh my god, that could kill a cow. Unfortunately though, Weedle will fill your wounds with a strong toxin after it stabs you with either end of its body. Hopefully not both, because I'd rather not have it clamp onto me and just spill endless amounts of toxins into me. Fortunately though, it likes to eat leaves only, and often hides in grass and bushes, or shrubs, oh my goodness, within temperate forests, meaning they've got a wide range of places to live, but you're fine unless you go looking for trouble in their little hiding spots. Unlike Metapod, Kakuna here does have a way to fight back even while it cannot move, as it can extend poison barbs from its body. It does this in order to stab anyone that thinks that they could get a free meal out of this Pokemon. Otherwise, again, won't have to worry about stepping on them, since they like to hang from tree branches via long strands of silk most of the time. Yet, no episode, I will admit, will ever defeat the horrifying visual we get that shows and exemplifies just how terrifying Pokemon can be and their evolutions, as Kakuna is shown to evolve in this dramatic sequence into Beedrill, in our first introduction to this Pokemon in the anime, because this is when we see an entire quote-unquote hive of Kakuna, with their metamorphosis complete, hatch from their cocoons and take to the skies as the meter-tall, 65-pound Beedrill. Do I need to keep telling you their size and weight? Probably not. Am I going to keep doing it on occasion here and there? Absolutely, because that Beedrill weighs more than my German Shepherd, and that is terrifying. What makes Beedrill scarier is that while yes, they don't truly live in a hive, they will populate a tree together and work together to solve basic problems regarding food, territory, and reproduction, even while we have no idea if they even have a queen to keep them prim and proper, which I say that's terrifying, but that's actually an amazing thing considering the amount of intelligence that these Pokemon have, and people often mistakenly denote them to be very brutish, angry Pokemon that have no sense in their head, which, I mean, they can be brutish and angry, but they're smart. They're also hyper protective of their previous forms, and just like real life, if you disturb even one of their members, they will all come after you. And while I could not find confirmation, if we look at the Pokemon we can see with Beedrill, and how its arm stingers are roughly half of its height or length, whatever, this makes them at least 1 foot long mini spears that will skip filling you with poison and instead turn you into a Krispy Kreme donut. Mind you, in their Pokédex, it directly states that they appear in swarms and they will jab you repeatedly if you dare to approach their nest. And I know what you might be thinking. I'll just get my fire-type Pokemon to burn them all and the whole forest down. You realize that they outnumber you about 1,000 to 1 on any given situation, right? And on any given day, you could only have a total of 6 actual trained Pokemon with you. And if you did burn down the forest, that is considered arson. Do not do that. You cannot burn down an entire forest. Plus, despite how dangerous these Pokemon are, they are still pollinators. How effective they are is up for question, but pollinators nevertheless, making them necessary to the planet. And nobody's gonna try breeding them to have smaller stingers, as that is just a death sentence itself. Not just for you, but for these Beedrill, because they likely, as many of our future bug-type Pokemon we will discuss have, developed these large defensive methods or offensive methods in order to keep themselves safe in aggressive environments. Before we do continue, I do want to say thank you so much for watching. Please do make sure that you do subscribe, share, or even comment on this video, as watch time and comments are one of the best ways to help a channel grow. Tell me what your thoughts are about bug-type Pokemon. Tell me about your favorite insect for that matter. Tell me an insect fun fact. And I will admit, YouTube ad revenue is not reliable, and in fact, YouTube has been claiming more people are seeing my videos and watching them, which is great, but then it is overall lowering my reach, which is meaning that it's showing my videos to less people, even though more people are watching, which makes no sense. So that puts the channel at risk, as if I can't monetarily pay my bills, then I gotta slow down videos and go pick up another job. So if you are able to and would like to go the extra mile, please do become a member on here or Patreon, in which you'll get a number of different perks, behind-the-scenes content, special voting, and more. And you could also just simply give a super thanks here on the channel, as this helps ensure I can continue making videos at the pace that I do while supporting future content. And maybe one day I can pay or commission an artist regularly to do the thumbnails, as I do the research, the editing, the thumbnails, everything myself currently, and this takes a lot of time. If you can't support the channel monetarily, then I ask you to stay responsible and instead share the channel around as best as you can. I don't get sponsors, so I would also like to say that on May 15th to 17th, I will be hosting a membership marathon with a number of different rewards and or goals. So join along and fight your professor, or give me challenges in a slew of different games that I will be playing. Otherwise, once again, thank you so much for watching, as even that means a lot to me, and on with the rest of the video. Paras and Parasect might be absolute monsters in the Pokemon Legends Arceus games according to everyone else, but they're not really that much of a threat, and I never really had an issue with them. Everyone else was like, ah! Ah! And I was just sitting here like, hey, Cyndaquil, burn that mother. They really just prefer to live in hot and humid environments because the Tochukasa mushrooms that grow on their back slowly grow and essentially replace their brain and their nervous system by the time it does evolve into Parasect, which it's taken me a long time to finalize my thoughts on that one, and the whole idea of the Paras or Parasect being dead is one thing, but to imagine that a mushroom takes over your body and you're still alive in there, because you're not decaying, your cells are alive, it's just that when you remove the mushrooms, they don't move anymore, which, okay, if they're not dead, but then they're not in control, oh, it just tapped into their spine, their brain, you name it, and now everything else is pretty much just gone, and they get to enjoy living life without any effort given whatsoever or without feeling pain. Ugh. Also, I have to admit, it's been very, very tempting, and you guys really should let me know if I should cover a video on the Pokemon biology book that someone made a long time ago, showing the biology of a number of different Pokemon. It's really cool. In addition to the fact that, yes, I do know about the new Pokemon Ecology series, or the new Pokemon Ecology episode that's in Mandarin. I did watch that. It's just Pokédex stuff, animated. And then the Pokemon Ecology book that should be coming out. Yeah, you bet I'm going to cover that. So if you really want to see me cover those 2 books and so much more, support the channel because I got to get those funds from somewhere. Paras and Parasect otherwise just exist wherever mushrooms grow best, infest trees, and drain the trees of their nutrients before moving on to the next tree and continuing this process until there are far too many of these invasive creatures to control and they effectively kill every tree in existence. Sounds pretty bad when you put it that way, but this also ensures that trees themselves don't outlive their lifespans and take unnecessary nutrients without giving back to nature itself. And luckily, these aren't absolutely massive Pokemon. They do get eaten quite a bit and only live in certain areas. One area they actually can't really survive well in is Alola, where it is speculated that due to a lack of moisture in most places due to the sheer heat, or potentially even lack of nutrients that are in the area, as they also fight with Shoutout that will actively attack them, or rather they attack each other actively, causing it to struggle to grow. Venonat and Venomoth are also fairly low risk, considering Venonat is attracted to bright lights and just eats insects. The problem with it, though, is that they shoot lasers from their eyes, and poison apparently oozes from all over its body. Why? Why does it actually need to do that? What is the purpose? I mean, I guess it could be because they are probably weak by all standards, which means that they would otherwise be an incredibly easy meal were it not for that ability. They're also not even supposed to be fluffy, as apparently they are said to have evolved with a coat of thin, stiff hair that covers its entire body for protection, meaning it might be more like petting a hedgehog. Either way, it's not going to be as pleasant to the touch as it seems to be. But when it does evolve into the nearly 5-foot terror that is Venomoth, it will drop scales similarly to how Butterfree does, and depending on which ones you touch, they have different effects, because they leak out poison once they make contact with the skin, which can either directly poison you or paralyze you. Honestly, I expect you just get a combination of both at any given time and have your fate sealed rather quickly. They feed on insects, come out at night to hunt anything attracted to lights, while it itself is attracted to lights. Imagine that. You might already complain about June bugs or any other creature that mindlessly slams itself full force into a window seeking the divine light of lamp. But I want you to envision the horrifying sight of this thing doing exactly that. Now, you might know that Venomoth is said to have a short lifespan, and you might think once again that this is a good thing. No, it is not, technically, because if something has a shorter lifespan, then that typically means that there has to be more of them in order for the species to stay alive. This thing could be laying millions of eggs each day, and only 1,000 or so hatch every time it's a Venonat, as they might get eaten or just perish to the elements, who then bounce around all happily until about 100 of them may evolve into Venomoth. And then they lay 1 million eggs each. Because guess what? There are a lot of Pokemon out there that exclusively prey upon bug Pokemon, or at least have them as a big part of their diet. So there has to be a ridiculous amount of these creatures out there in stable amounts, or otherwise the whole ecosystem would collapse. So you can't just inject one of these Pokemon with an inability to have babies because they're necessary. Have I given you anxiety about these creatures yet? I don't necessarily actually intend to, but this is simultaneously freaking me out a little bit and fascinating me more and more as we go along. This next line gets a little bit tricky in terms of its evolutions as we talk about Scyther, Scizor, and Kleavor. Starting with Scyther, it is an adept hunter that moves with blinding speeds that are too fast to be tracked with the naked eye, while also blending in with its environments. It maintains the sharpness of its arm sides like a good chef or swordsman, being able to cut down entire trees in a single slice. And I don't know about you, but I am neither thicker nor more durable than any tree in existence. Though to note, it cannot cut through tarantulous threads, which is a little bit interesting. That might be having to do with tension. Maybe they're able to have a little bit more give, or something's going on in the molecular level that we are unaware of, and neither is the Pokemon world, as they state that they are studying the interaction, for lack of a better word, I suppose. Scyther can form swarms with a single leader that is chosen through combat, and they become aggressive when faced with the color red. I've got some bad news for you, buddy. Because that's exactly what you turn into when you evolve. Oh, also, by the way, did you know that it could fly? They just kind of choose not to, preferring to instead ambush prey by jumping out from the grass nearby, so you are almost guaranteed to never see these Pokemon coming. Now, when we speak of its evolutions, in the modern day, Kleavor is only shown to exist in the canyon biome of Blueberry Academy, within the bamboo forest. And while that means it has not been properly found in the wild, this also means that there is a non-zero chance that it could appear, just that nobody has encountered it yet. And it kind of does state so in its information itself that they're just kind of rare because of the black augurite they need to evolve into Kleavor. Now, it has shards of rock in the shape of massive axes on its arms, have grown to a height of nearly 6 feet or 2 meters, and weigh nearly 200 pounds or 89 kilograms, meaning it is not only taller than me, but it weighs just a bit more than I do, and that instills fear into my little heart. Now, they chop down trees to signal territory at the very least, so hopefully you can see a bunch of chopped trees and realize that you need to turn around and leave. The more chipped its augurite axes are, the more experienced they are. It's like a shark. They're known to be very hostile, rough, crude, violent, and it's stated that you should just avoid them at all costs, as even their Pokédex states. If one should chance upon this Pokemon in the wilds, one's only recourse is to flee. To my understanding, they are more solitary creatures, and solitary creatures, they kind of tend to live in, well, solitude, I guess. Black widows, timber rattlesnakes, brown recluses. Recluse is literally in the name of that one, and so many other creatures that just typically like to be left alone. They stay far away from other creatures, give signals such as markings or loud sounds when you get close to them. I mean, even bears, skunks, bobcats, cougars, they all leave markings, whether they're claws, scrapings, even deer do it now that I think about it, and I'm kind of losing I'm getting lost in the sauce here. But either way, overall, their goal is to tell you, this is my home. Whether you smell it, you see it, you feel it, does not matter, or hear it, you need to leave me alone. And if you do not, I will murder you. So with that in mind, leave Kleavor territory alone, or you'll know what it feels like to live during the French Revolution. Now, you might like to think that Scizor is not found in the wild, but I'm here to remind you that metal coats are just a rich person's fast track to evolution. Both Steelix and Scizor absolutely exist in the wild, they're just rare. You can even encounter a Scizor in the totem battle with Komodo in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, and this is because that line of dragon Pokemon shed their metallic scales, which Scyther can then use to evolve, which is pretty dope. Even if that wasn't the case though, they are said to be found rarely within grasslands in the world of Pokemon. Their bodies, muscles and all, are made of a metal as hard as steel with the ability to use its pincers that can crush any hard object. Though, they kind of just say nah and decide to punch, throw in hands with its opponent and boxing them into oblivion. They're also going to move fast, as while they can't fly, their wings continually flutter faster than a beat at an EDM concert to ensure that they stay cool. But that isn't to say that they are absolutely incapable of flight, just that it's uncommon. They'll still at least glide for short distances, and once you do begin to fight one, they will punch you until nothing but scrap remains. Once again, another creature that is most likely solitary and rare, but also one that I say you should avoid at all costs. Pinsir is arguably one of the freakiest bug Pokemon out there personally, and I commend it for making me uncomfortable every single time that I lay my eyes on its vertical slit of a mouth. Another bug that is just shy of 5 feet tall, though I assume its horns make up roughly half of its height, considering Ash is 4'7", and the horns are the only thing above his head. Even if we look at Go, who is 4'6", we can find a very similar result. Just remember though, any height and weight we find is just the average for Pokemon. Now, with Pinsir weighing in at 121 pounds, it can easily lift anything twice that weight, being 142 or more, as it will also crush, toss, bludgeon, or tear apart its opponents. Once you are caught, the thorns it has on the horns will stab into you and ensure you cannot escape until you are torn in half. Pokemon's words, not mine. The horns are also incredibly flexible, so have fun trying to escape their reach. They not only eat other creatures, but will be very protective of the sap it eats. And while you may think that you'd see this thing coming a mile away, it will sleep underground while keeping its pincers above ground, so one unlucky contestant can step on down and find themselves caught in its trap. And to top it all off, they are social creatures among their own kind to some degree at least, as the thickness and overall impressive quality of their pincers determines their popularity with the opposite gender. While they can be intimidating, even a bit aggressive and territorial, if you live in colder environments, then you have nothing to worry about as they cannot withstand the cold. Otherwise, during general colder seasons, they will sleep more underground or reside deep within forests where they can be safe from the frost. Now that I think about it, when I think of Pinsir, the main reason why they probably exist and why their horns are so tough is to ensure that populations of Butterfree and or Beedrill don't become too high, or even just other bug-type Pokemon that are born in chrysalises or are metamorphosized words. Input word there. Going through metamorphosis, okay? Because maybe you don't want to deal with a Caterpie or Weedle. Maybe the Beedrill and Butterfree are going to be a lot closer to those. But if you can quickly grab and take care of a Kakuna or Metapod, which is a food source that no other Pokemon typically takes care of, only being known to have Pick-a-Peck and Trumbeak, I believe, as confirmed killers for Metapod and Kakuna, then sure, you adapt so that way you can take advantage of this very plentiful food source. So it makes sense that we would see Pinsir in these areas. As we move into Gen 2, Ladybug and Lediyin are another duo of bug Pokemon that we don't have to worry about too much, as they are pretty physically weak and aren't very aggressive. That isn't to say that they wouldn't beat you to a pulp, or at least Lediyin wouldn't beat you into a pulp, it absolutely would. It's just that it's rather unlikely. The worst case scenario would be if you hurt them in any way and it beats you down JoJo style, as it's apt to do. Otherwise, they're great pollinators. They're going to be drinking up that nectar and that starlight, which is very different compared to what real life standards are. I know before anyone says it, I've said it in many videos, but ladybugs, not Lediyans, not ladybug, ladybugs, in real life, yeah, they might eat aphids. They might survive off of nectar and pollen, so on and so forth. They might just eat a little bit of plants here and there. But when we look at Ladybug and Lediyin, they're plants, nectar, pollen. They're not eating other Pokemon, and then they're subsisting on starlight, which is not technically a thing by all means, but Pokemon says it's a separate thing, so we have to say it's a separate thing. Oops. Spinarak is just a pug-sized spider, and it sticks to itself more than anything. Honestly, they're kind of cute with the face on their abdomen, especially as the face can be different with each different Spinarak. Their poison is only strong enough to weaken, not to kill, and so it relies on prey falling into its web in order to get its next meal. As a Rhyodos, we have an effective, intelligent little demon on our hands. They live within both temperate and tropical forests, and at night, they actively hunt for prey, never resting in any specific spot during their hunting time. As they travel, they have a singular thread that they can excrete that will lead them back home when they are satisfied, though when it does find prey, it won't always immediately attack. Instead, a Rhyodos might actually decide to attach a thread to the prey, and so, let's say it caught us, and then we thought we narrowly escaped death, we run on home only to unknowingly be leading a Rhyodos to the rest of our family. It will then work to capture all prey present, wrapping them in its thread and drinking the victim's bodily fluids in their entirety. Ariados quickly turns a terrifying moment into a full-on horror movie through all of this. And of course, Spinarak and Ariados have been shown living in colonies together deep in forests, meaning there is always the chance that entire small villages could have been overrun by these Pokemon in the past. To me, this just makes me more weary of forests in the world of Pokemon, which is a real shame considering I love wandering through deep forests and staring at the open water, though even if you do that in real life, you always pose to run into risks. This is just really showing, though, why you can't go wandering around in the tall grass. Though, again, to keep in mind, something that I actually haven't said is that while insect Pokemon may have higher populations deeper in the forest, the rest of our Pokemon are more likely to do so too. Meaning that Ariados isn't just running around actually destroying entire populations, but is instead just ensuring like, oh no, it's unfortunate, but hey, Buneary produces really fast, assumedly. It's a rabbit after all, so Ariados has gotta eat. And they gotta make sure that, you know, Buneary doesn't eat all of the foliage in the area. Easy, natural predator to ensure the forest continues to thrive. Yanma is not much of a threat despite being a smash-of dragonfly, assuming you never make it angry, that is, since they can generate shockwaves capable of breaking glass or launching a house skyward by flapping its wings fast enough. Just rip the whole foundation off. They're often found in swampy areas and will hunt insects for food, so at least your pets will be safe outside from them. These Pokemon also tend to be territorial, guarding their habitat while flying at high speeds and looking around in a full 360 degrees of vision. So this is very interesting to me. The fact that we have hardly scratched the surface of a quarter of our Pokemon, and so many of them do say that they only eat other insects, or maybe we could assume that they eat small mammals, but not really humans. They're territorial. They want their homes to be safe. They're not actually a threat unless you encroach upon their territory. So just keep that in mind. Now, I will say, I do fear whenever Yanma manage to unlock their ancient DNA from the Carboniferous period and evolve into Yanmega, the 6-foot-tall, 100-pound dragonfly that directly states it can carry an adult human away. I don't want to know how they found that one out, and I really feel bad for the first person that did. These are also found in swampy or wooded areas and will often create shockwaves that knock down huge trees and critically injure foes just by flapping their wings when they take off for flight. That's not a helicopter in the forest, that's a Yanmega, baby. But how do you even react to this? You can't see shockwaves in the air. In fact, the only way you would notice it is if you manage to see the trees getting blasted away right before you would have to duck just to avoid having your body pulverized by an invisible force. This could just happen in the forest and be completely unrelated to your presence, allowing you to get struck entirely by being in the wrong place and in the wrong time. When it does decide that it wants to seek you down as prey, by the way, it says nothing about only eating insects in this form, it will usually aim for its prey's most vulnerable spot, wasting no time in the process. It is extremely violent and will bite apart its prey's heads while flying at a high speed. This Pokemon invented drive-by biting. Not a concept I'd ever thought I'd have to say, but here we are. Now, for a fun little dragonfly fact or two. One, their color, I've learned, is entirely based off their metabolism. So they can have these beautiful, vibrant colors as they glitter and flit through the skies, and I've seen, goodness, hundreds of them on a beach during once like spring really rolls into summer, and it's really nice. They're really beautiful, honestly, and it's not really a sight that I have seen often. But when they do pass away, all the color drains away as, again, with it being entirely based off of metabolism, they're no longer eating, which means that they cannot maintain their vibrant colors anymore. Also, dragonflies themselves are in the final stages of their life, if I remember correctly. Someone correct me if I am wrong. I don't want to ever misinform, but I believe it's roughly their last 2 weeks of life that they are in when you see them in their dragonfly form. Otherwise, they just exist in the water, then eventually grow just as any other bug would and emerge into a dragonfly state. They also, which is really cool, have a little horn on their head, which is why our dragonfly Pokemon may have it, is because They, if they're large enough, will even spear minnows in the water for food. Dragonflies are dope. They're one of the coolest insects out there, in my opinion. Praying mantis are another really cool one, but too bad we don't get to really talk about. Oh wait, no, Scyther is technically a praying mantis. That's okay. It's pretty much the same thing. It's gonna cut you. Pineco and Fortress might be a little bit of a demon in the games, commonly known for going boom at the first notice, but in lore they aren't exactly the same. Pineco will just wait until prey comes by, such as Cutiefly, and will eat it once it's close enough. This helps take care of any of our flying Pokemon that might be in overabundance. Though while Fortress does the same exact thing, the insides of these Pokemon have never been seen, as they're just protective coverings is all that we do see, opening and closing too fast to peek at what's inside. The only time Pineco really explodes is if it is disturbed, so don't go shaking trees in the forest and you won't have nature's pipe bomb dropping on your noggin. They are otherwise not aggressive creatures, are fairly docile and passive, and for some reason Fortress can just kind of float around. Pokemon that are not bug types but are insects, thanks to them being included in the bug egg group, actually include our flying scorpion Pokemon Gligar. While it is based on the scorpion fly, a freaky little thing, the two are actually nothing alike, because the real life version primarily feeds on decaying matter and fruit, while Gligar and Gliscor tend to hunt for prey. Gligar may eat berries, but it also glides around and will facehug you before stabbing you with its poisonous stinger in order to take you down. It is also resistant to poison itself and makes its home in mountainous regions. It can't fly, only really glide around, and if it does land on the ground, it can't walk very well either, just kind of hops around, making it otherwise a non-threat. Though, when it does evolve into Gliscor, we got a different story. Because Gliscor will grab prey using its tail, and much like a vampire, will sink its teeth into the neck and drain the prey of all blood, even taking pride in doing so. This, of course, has to be an adaptation due to the harsher climates and less prey that are found on the mountains, meaning that Gliscor has to be able to get all of its nutrients somehow and will be a little bit of a glutton, overfeeding now so that way it can last longer without food. There are vampire bats out there that do entirely subsist off of blood, by the way, and that's just a special adaptation that they do specifically have. Gliscor is still only gliding around silently, by the way, and again, hops on the ground, so you could probably just get over if it does run into you. Though they are nocturnal, and they live within thick pine forests, swamps, and alpine regions. Basically anywhere where it can have a height advantage over anyone else in the area and make gliding easier through that height and through updrafts that may be found in any given area. It's an incredibly rare Pokemon to the point that you can only find it in Unova on a route that is full of dangerous Pokemon, such as Seviper, Bisharp, Braviary, Mandibuzz, so you can kind of understand why it had to become so vicious, just that way it can have a chance at surviving. Shuckle is definitely a friend, though it's a little bit on the shy side and isn't really a bug. It's like a slime mold. Either way, the worst thing you have to worry about is if you decide to drink its fermented berry juice, which naturally could have some level of alcohol in it, even if Pokemon itself doesn't say anything about it. Though I will at least admit there are ways to ferment things without alcohol being produced from the fermenting process or that alcohol to be burned off. Otherwise, you'll never really see Shuckle unless you're actively looking for it under rocks or if it is pretending to be a rock. And to close out Generation 2, Heracross is also shaped like a friend, as it really only eats sap and honey. Don't get me wrong though, while it is just as rare as Pinsir tends to be, it is also far stronger, being able to lift things that are 100 times its weight, meaning it can lift nearly 12,000 pounds, which is about the weight of a small school bus. Do not make it angry and you'll have nothing to worry about. Make it angry and you won't have to worry about it for very long. Actually, how much weight can a Hercules beetle flip? According to OneEarth.org, another of the species slightly smaller than a rhinoceros is called the Hercules beetle. Due to its Herculean strength, adults of these species can lift objects 850 times their weight. 850! How much do they weigh? They're 170 millimeters or 6.75 inches long, including the horn. They can weigh up to 85 grams or 3 ounces and can lift with their horns up to 850 times their own weight, which would be approximately 72.25 kilograms or 159 pounds. I call BS. I call BS. Who gave a Hercules beetle a human being to lift up? I call absolute BS. There's no way. Okay. So I'm learning a lot right now, and you're learning with me, all right? This is my process. So I'm scrolling through, I'm going through a bunch of different sources, and people are saying that there's a lot of confusion as to why Hercules beetles can or can't lift a ton at any given time. It's because people are messing up their math, okay? I'm not going to tell you all the math that goes behind it and everything like that, but there's a number of different misused rules or laws that people are doing, mixing up their math, mixing up their measurements, whether it's ounces and grams and so on and so forth, which is messing up a lot of stuff. Now, ultimately, I'm seeing 2.8 grams, which, yeah, again, is like, let's say that's how much they weigh, times 850 comes out to about 4.5 pounds, which is still significantly more believable for a beetle so big, but still isn't true, as 100 times the weight of the average beetle from an experiment comes out to about half a pound. So in other words, they say that according to the human law that we've applied to animals, that this beetle should be able to lift 850 times its own weight, which is not necessarily true, because experiments apparently have only come out to produce that it can lift about half a pound, which makes way more sense. And to just put a final pin in it, Natural Wildlife Federation. Rhinoceros beetles are herbivorous insects named for their horn-like projections on and around the male's heads. Most are black, gray, greenish in color, and some are covered in soft hairs. Another name given to them is the Hercules beetle, because they possess a strength of a Herculean proportion. Adults of some species can lift objects 30 times their own weight without sacrificing any speed. That would be the equivalent to a human having no problem carrying an adult male white rhinoceros. Some can even lift up to 100 times their own weight, though they have trouble moving at that point. Male beetles use this extreme strength to fight off other males and win the fight to mate with females. They can grow up to 6 inches, 15 centimeters, making them some of the largest beetles in the world. So, by all means, by that math, they can lift up to 18.75 pounds, which 18.75 pounds is just 8.5 kilograms. So, there you go. That would be like the maximum they can actually lift. And the next time that a Hercules beetle is brought up for whatever random conversation you might be in, quote Krillic, I'm going to be a buzzkill, but also share actual information and let you know that they could only lift upwards of 100 times their own weight. And then you tell them about how many people were messing up and using the wrong scientific and mathematic rules from things like ants and applying them to a beetle, which is not how things can just work. So, there you go. Anywho, we spent too long on this, and I'm ready to move on. Arriving in Hoenn, we have Wurmple to greet us, and what better way to greet Wurmple back than for you to purchase the new Wurmple sticker. Purchase this lovely die-cast sticker on my Teespring, where you can find a slew of merch, allowing you to get something back for directly supporting the channel if you would like something physical. Anywho, for Wurmple, it eats leaves and sap, and that's really it. But it is also strong enough to pull bark off of trees and would love some respect of its personal bubble, or else you will get poked by one of its tail spikes, which is actually what it uses to peel off that bark. They might only weaken you with its poison rather than kill you, but who knows what other dangerous creatures might come looking for such an easy meal. Now, when it does eventually wrap itself into a good metamorphic slumber, it is a literal coin flip as to whether it'll turn into Silcoon or Cascoon. Both don't move much, nor eat really at all. I think one of them subsists entirely off of the dew of leaves, and are just spiky little orbs until they reach their respective evolutions. Beautify is actually incredibly tame, being another pollinator. Just don't disturb it when it is sipping on that good nectar unless you want it to stab you for ruining its peace. Now, you might be about to tippity-tap on your keyboard once more and claim, but wait, it says it drinks bodily fluids. Yes, and I know I'm pretty sure it uses the word prey, but that might have actually been a mistake in the Pokédex, as we know there are mistakes in the Pokédex, because regular butterflies also do that. Many insects technically will sip the bodily fluids of a carrion in order to get the form of nutrition that they may not be getting, or at least get it easier. So, not a big deal, actually, especially as you really shouldn't bother any creature when it is eating. That's just asking for death. Dustox, on the other hand, is very much like all of our other scaled insects, releasing scales as it flies that are toxic enough to, and I quote, make a pro wrestler sick, meaning it would likely send the average person to critical care. And while they live in forests, fields, and mountains, it is said that they do move in swarms and people struggle to push them away. Once again, natural crop dusting. And if you live in a region where they do exist, then you will likely have to deal with them since they are attracted to lights as well. The big city lights, of course, will bring these moths a schmoovin' in. And if you can't stop them, they apparently just eat all the leaves on the roadside trees. So that's pretty rough for both nature and infrastructure, because if they are swarming this way, they might not have left any leaves where they are coming from. I would not be surprised if Dustox would be monitored like any other mass-moving pest, just to keep farmlands or people safe. You know, like how they do air quality level advisories. Filters have also probably got to be real good in this world, or if you have asthma, once again, you're probably not making it. Now, when I think of Dustox and the fact that it is first found in Hoenn here, it makes a lot of sense. Hoenn is a lot more in tune with nature. I mean, literally, look at Four Tree City. It is just Treehouse City. And the people there, again, thrive off of nature. They live basically on the outskirts of a jungle, so it makes perfect sense that a moth like this would exist where there is far more foliage available for it to eat. Well, I guess technically not foliage. I don't know the definition of foliage, I will say that, but I primarily just mean the leaves from trees. Oh, foliage is just plant leaves collectively. I just overthought that. Either way, let's move on and say hello to two other friends that are just eating bugs as we look at Surskit and Masquerain. We have fast-moving Water Strider and... I actually don't think I ever learned what Masquerain is supposed to represent. I haven't had to because it was never relevant until now, and there are claims, I find, that say that it is based on crane flies, moths, maybe a couple other insects, but from my understanding, there is no direct comparison other than saying it is a flying bug that has false eyes to scare away predators. Just be prepared to see it hanging out under the eaves of your roof when it does rain. If mosquitoes did exist in the world of Pokemon, which I assume they technically do in some capacity, because Plankton apparently do, but Masquerain and Water Striders would absolutely nom on them and lower their populations, which would be great. Nincada are just cicadas. They live underground, eat roots, then emerge to mate and die, being basically blind the entire time. Ninjask will scream at you if it doesn't want to listen to you. I'm not even remotely kidding. It says it right in the Pokédex. You'll otherwise just watch it eat up some sap from trees. The real problem is if Shedinja appears in the wild, because based on how it is described, it should appear in the wild randomly, as it is described as a discarded shell that came to life. This relates to the molt that is left behind by cicadas, though this one is said to steal souls if you look into its back, which, got some bad news for you. We are always looking at its back from within the games, and if you saw my thumbnail, haha, your soul is gone. Though this likely just means that by literally peering inside, you would lose your soul, not just accidentally peeping the horrors. There's a difference between, oh no, its back is facing me, and let me just look inside of your spine. Though to my understanding, Shedinja is not inherently evil, nor do they actively choose to show you their soul-sucking insides, so probably just fine. I really don't know how they would fit within an ecosystem. Volbeat and Illumis are pollinator fireflies dressed like a greaser and his boo, but are harmless in the end. In fact, they are great pollinators that I've learned often pair themselves with Roselia, as they are almost always found on the same route together. This means that without Volbeat and Illumis, there would likely be less Roselia around, probably because they actually respect Roselia and don't try to eat or steal its flowers, which would result in the death of the aggressor. Otherwise, again, they're fireflies, and hopefully they're not facing the same fates that real-life fireflies are, because real-life light is what deters fireflies from mating because, hey, let me show you how big my light is, how bright it is, and then a car comes by and it's like, oh wow, you know what? Maybe I can't compete with that. I can't compete with that, girl. Go be with that. And then, you know, the firefly can't mate with the car. So, what do you expect? That's also vastly underplaying the effect of lights on fireflies and so much more. But nevertheless, we can move on, as you're not going to run into an Anorith or a Maldo, considering Anorith itself is not able to withstand the current conditions of water in the modern area. But they are the Anomalocaris Pokemon, which is really cool. Our last entry for Generation 3 here is actually another non-bug type that is in the Bug A group, the Trapinch line. And they're one of my favorite lines of Pokemon. Trapinch itself is based on the antlion and even acts like one for that matter, as it primarily resides within deserts at the bottom of a conical pit that it created. This allows other Pokemon to accidentally waltz their way in and face the hungry jaws of our Pokemon here as they slowly slide to their doom. Though it is fairly harmless as long as you pay attention to where you're going, and as long as you're not blind thanks to a sandstorm. When it does evolve into Vibrava, it looks nearly identical to the antlion's adult stage, and due to its environment, it has become a lot more active as a predator. It creates vibrations and ultrasonic waves with its wings, which can cause headaches in humans, but will otherwise make its prey faint. From there, it spits out stomach acid onto the unconscious prey, and then will eat it after it melts. And if ever it can't eat its fill, maybe it got too full actually, it will then preserve its prey within the desert's hot sands. This is amazing, as this provides other Pokemon that are struggling within these sands with food, and even allows nutrients to return to the desert sands easier, which can help the few plant-based Pokemon that dig their roots real deep and thrive here. Flygon, despite being friend-shaped, may be a bit of a threat though. This is, again, brought on by the harshness of the environment, while Flygon itself is also not very common, though it does work with others. Its wings kick up sandstorms, so there is always the chance as well that it is nearby, but we just simply cannot see it. While its wings flap, they make a sort of singing sound, which is what gave it the nickname, the elemental spirit of the desert. Which, yes, there are the singing sands which exist in real life, and those are amazing to know that they just simply exist. As it sings, the sound attracts prey to it like a siren, leading them deeper into the desert, stranded and lost, before it finally strikes. They will work alongside Crocodile to search for food, giving a veil of sand to them both as Crocodile hunts, captures, kills, and then they just split the prey real nice and cordially. Flygon is pretty essential by this manner, considering it pairs really well with one of the most aggressive creatures in every desert, or the known Pokemon world of deserts. Either way, showing that both can be incredibly intelligent and tactical in their approach to surviving the desolate landscape. Sing your hearts out for the Kricketot and Kricketune, who make plenty of noise themselves through the form of music. Kricketot specifically shakes its head or rubs its antennae together to create sounds similar to a xylophone or marimba in order to communicate, gathering in great numbers on autumn nights. Sorry, I immediately started like grinning and internally laughing because now I'm imagining them having the steel drum sound and for the Mario Sunshine soundtrack to play every autumn. Now, while Kricketune will rub its arms together to produce sound and improvise melodies, these melodies range from individual to individual, which can be released after resonating within their belly and can be used to even signal emotions. They're even used in contests to kind of figure out who has the better one, a fuller sound, you name it. And these Pokemon are eating some other insects, but are another set that are fairly harmless and might even give us some very beautiful nights as the sun sets, the leaves fall, and the chorus of Kricketot and Kricketune arrive to bless us with their personal melodies. Also, if I don't do it, I feel like I know how the comment section is gonna go, but you gotta hit that. Burmy and Wormadam are bagworms that cover themselves in 3 different forms of litter: leaf, sand, and trash, all bound by its own silk as they hang from trees. And if they're anything like real-life bagworms, they're likely draining nutrients from the trees themselves, which can help, again, with biodiversity, as they may prefer to attach themselves to specific trees. When it does evolve into Wormadam, the cloak fuses to its body and is never shed, though that's pretty much it. It's pretty chill as a Pokemon all in all, and I would dare say it might even be soft or plush to the touch. Though the male Burmy will evolve into Mothim, similar to how some real-life male bagworms may get wings. Mothim is a little strange itself though, as it is a nomadic and nocturnal Pokemon that loves nectar and honey, but doesn't produce its own. It instead breaks down the door of Combee's home and robs them of their honey before skipping town. It is never really seen near flower gardens, but is at least seen in fields and mountains, which is how scientists or even general field observers were able to follow these Mothim and find this to be their source of food. This would initially seem like a very much bad thing, but too much honey in a hive can cause problems, leaving less space for a colony. It could even make it harder for the hive to protect the honey and other issues that I am personally unaware of. In fact, I would not be surprised if Combee would eventually struggle to fly, since they are technically their own hive. And while I know Combee do eat honey, they may produce more than they can handle, and Mothim is a natural way to help ensure they don't flood with honey. Especially if it doesn't actually harm the Combee, then it won't have to worry about Vespiquen too much. Speaking of Combee and Vespiquen, they're next. With Combee, each phase does have its own consciousness, and they can combine their hexes continuously to form massive walls. The male Combee, unlike real bees, are the workers, ones who do all the pollinating, nectar gathering, you name it. They form groups of upwards of 100 individuals and are generally harmless and tend to flee when threatened, though are driven away by Beautyfly often. When not gathering nectar, they attempt to protect Vespiquen while also producing honey, which also serves as food, each swarm having a different flavor. This is very much the same as real-life bees, as I've had buckwheat honey, which tastes more like molasses. And then there's vulture bees, who produce honey from meat, and that is supposed to be incredibly disgusting. How we know this, or why this happens, is because the honey flavor depends, to my knowledge, on the proteins that they are turning into honey, where they get those proteins from. Combee are very protective of their Vespiquen, willing to fight to the death for her, and they commonly live in caves and hollow trees of forests and other natural secluded areas with their queen. Combee sleep by creating a hive with other Combee, locking together into a tessellated wall to feel safe in larger numbers. Can you check to see if there's a monster under the bed? No, because we are the bed. Now look, bees are great. Please, be nice to them. Respect their space. Maybe plant some bee-attracting flowers to help them out, especially if you have a garden, because they will also help you grow your vegetables or whatever the heck you're trying to grow. Now, you might be worrying about how Vespiquen may be aggressive and deadly, but that is not actually the case. Through releasing pheromones, Vespiquen is able to command its hive of Combee. The more pheromones, the more Combee it will have in its hive. It carries its grubs inside its body. That little bell dress it has going on at the bottom, that's where she keeps them, protecting them, feeding them, and itself by making honey. They are territorial, though only if you are attempting to sneak into their hive will you have an actual problem to deal with. This is because it will attack and even feed on any outsiders sneaking in. Though if you can prove yourself to a Vespiquen by helping defend its hive, then it may repay your kindness with a reward. What does this mean? Raise a Combee, get a Vespiquen, protect it and its hive as you give it a safe space, it pollinates flowers, pollinates your garden, and you win the lottery of honey, as you have perfectly friendly Pokemon as long as you respect them, and they'll likely even help protect you and your home. Massive win with the schmassive nearly 4-foot Queen Bee, and even a bigger win for the planet. Terror time with Scorpy line to finish out Generation 4, though once again I have to remind you that Scorpy and Drapion will exist in specialized or harsher environments, which bring out their need to be more aggressive in order to survive. Scorpy ambushes prey by burying itself in sand and will lie in wait before grabbing them with its tail claws and injecting poison, holding onto the prey until the poison takes effect. And to exemplify its ability to reside within harsh environments, it has been known to survive a whole year without nourishment. It is related to Scolipede through a common ancestor, lives in deserts and dry areas like Reversal Mountain, though it can be found in marshy areas such as the Great Marsh of Sinnoh. It is considered highly dangerous due to its claws and poison, but it is also not found in colder temperatures as it cannot withstand them at all. When it does survive long enough within these harsh environments, it will evolve into Drapion, who is known to be very aggressive, primarily living in deserts or rocky places. It's sturdy, it's strong, it can now destroy you without the use of its poison, and it's oh so very proud of it. These things scrap cars. They can deflect the strikes of swords. Imagine being in medieval times and this thing rolls up to your castle. What do? Just surrender? Hand over all mortal possessions to Drapion? Because of its vicious nature and brutish temper, it is literally known as the Sand Demon, only known to avoid fights with one other large desert dweller, Hippowdon. Otherwise, it rampages as it pleases. Our Drapion here has gone from normal decomposing bug or simple aggressive trap layer to this ecological reset button. Every population needs a limit of sorts, otherwise they'll become run rampant through with disease, death, inbreeding, you name it. So Drapion rolls in with the machine guns akimbo and decimates the population, even the environment a little bit, which only helps future populations in the long run and might even restore nutrients to the ground or feed other carrion eaters, as it seems like it doesn't necessarily care to eat everything that it kills. So while it may be terrifying on the surface, it is just as necessary as a great shark is in the ocean. Kicking us off in a very kind set of decomposers that eat leaves and fermented matter found on forest floor, we have the Sewaddle line. In all honesty, they're pretty docile. They start off as caterpillars, they eat their fill, covering themselves up with leaves as clothing, which is attached to silk. Sewaddle even greet each other by basically fist bumping, which is adorable. Swadloon is directly stated to help plant life grow by converting falling leaves into nourishment, and Leavanny takes the place of our other motherly Pokemon, such as Kangaskhan and Chansey, as it will protect young or even baby Pokemon, clothe them, and ferment fallen leaves to warm its own eggs. Just don't harm any young Pokemon and you'll have nothing to worry about with this one, as it makes perfect sense that we have a Pokemon like this in Unova, since in this region we find far more fully evolved and terrifying and or destructive Pokemon, or at least a possibility of them appearing, such as Tyranitar in the wild. It may be rare, but you need to keep the population alive somehow. Also, all this fermenting of leaves and helping nutrients in the soil makes sense, as Unova has a lot of cities going on, but the few forests it has seems to be incredibly dense and lush, which is likely because of Pokemon like this. The Venipede line are a Pokemon that would induce a heart attack in me immediately if I ever saw them in person. Though Venipede itself is already a Pokemon that moves in swarms, it is incredibly aggressive, but only tends to attack creatures that it thinks it can defeat and then proceed to eat. Its poison is strong enough to paralyze large bird Pokemon, making them highly venomous. Though it often tends to leap before looking, meaning it might attack Pokemon without thinking and may result in its own defeat. It's really just residing deep in forests, hiding away before it does decide to strike from the bushes. And to be fair, these forests are, again, pretty dense with life, so an aggressive predator like this is actually fairly understandable. It evolves into a tire that can move at 60 miles per hour, it's covered in spikes to protect itself from predators even when it's not moving, and will crash into opponents to effectively use those poisonous daggers that it does have. Again, primarily deep within forests, but I just like to imagine it squealing like a tire as it attempts to maneuver around trees at top speeds. Its prey might not even actually see it coming before they get impaled and run over by this thing. Sorry, I never said its name. Whirlipede. There you go. And then you get Scolipede, the 8-foot tall, 2.5 meter, 442 pound, 200.5 kilogram demon centipede. And while it doesn't actually state its speed, it's fun to consider that since its base speed is over double what Whirlipede's speed is, that this thing could be moving at least as fast as Whirlipede, if not more, clogging it in at upwards of 120 miles per hour if that is true. It's like watching a building fly at you. They're aggressive, live in lush forests, pursue and fight until they win or die, and attack relentlessly with their horns while being known to be fast in their movements. Once it does catch you using the toxic spikes on its neck, it slams you into the ground for the deadly poison effect. In other words, it grabs you, impales you momentarily, then just slams you down and fills you with deadly toxins. Cool! It also only has one natural predator, being Scolipede or Sinnoh, who isn't even really here. And in fact, the two are natural predators of each other, making the other one prey if one wins. This, of course, is actually pretty important, considering you have two massive and aggressive creatures that need their populations to be kept in check and can be found closer to certain settlements. Dwebble and Crustle are more hermit crabs than they are anything else, but they are bug-type Pokemon who really just want to make their homes within a safe and sturdy rock. They might carve their way into another rock-type Pokemon incidentally, expelling a corrosive spray in order to do so. They, of course, feel most comfortable within said rocks, and without a replacement, their anxiety increases, though they may take temporary residence within the ports of Hippowdon, dislodging stones while being taken care of and protected in return. A nice little symbiotic nature kind of going on there. It will eventually evolve into Crustle after carrying all that rocky weight on its back, allowing it to carry other heavy rocks for long periods of time, even through arid and sandy lands. It does not like rain, likely because, to me, the rock does look like it's a little bit more sedimentary, maybe making it a softer rock in general, and it will even viciously fight over Crustle over territory. If the shell breaks, it loses said fight, and without its shell, it becomes weaker and less confident until it can renew its shell. Being creatures that live in the desert, their numbers are going to be a bit scarcer as they are opportunistic omnivores. And actually, if anything, they're a little bit more of a scavenger here. And while they may end up a little defensive, you have nothing to really worry about. Also, if you want to know how I know the diets of a number of these Pokemon, even if the Pokédex doesn't state it, check out my Pokemon Ecology series. I've completed Kanto through Alola, route per route, every Pokemon that appears naturally, while also keeping in mind their real-life inspirations if the Pokédex or anime information does not actually state their diets. And we're talking real diets. Not every Pokemon eats berries like they're shown to in the games, because that goes completely against what their Pokédex states. It's hard to talk about Karrablast without also talking about Shelmet, as the two are very much tied together ecologically. Shelmet is fairly protected and just munches on decaying matter or leaves, most likely, while spitting poison at those who would threaten it. Meanwhile, Karrablast is said to be the only currently known Pokemon that commonly hunts Shelmet and is able to break through its shell. Honestly, with both primarily being found in swampland, they are just a tick and a snail until Karrablast ruins that, taking the shell for itself to turn into Escavalier, while Shelmet quote-unquote evolves into Axelgor, who has to keep a cloth-like membrane wrapped around it at all times, or it risks being dried out, on top of being generally miserable for losing its shell, which is why it has such a dour expression, which is also incredibly hilarious that most people look at it and go, "Aw, he looks so cool, let's put that guy in a movie," when you look at people in the Pokemon world. Meanwhile, it's just suffering. And Escavalier has newly acquired armor that protects its whole body, flies around, jabs foes with its lances, and it's considered to be a brave Pokemon, taking on any challenge even if it's in trouble. Both of these Pokemon and their evolutions are pretty tame. You might end up finding yourself with a Karrablast attached to you, but that's pretty unlikely because it's a pretty big tick, and they're likely going after other Pokemon rather than humans. And while both are known to be speedy, they're not much of a danger and seem to be more about filling out populations and keeping each other in check. Joltik is not as tiny as it seems, considering it is a 4-inch tall spider that weighs a whole pound. That boy is dense, though it can't generate its own electricity, needing to attach to others in order to at least eat static electricity that is naturally produced, but it does no harm in doing so. It might feed on electrical sockets, it'll attach to Yamper's bottom, and is otherwise not aggressive unless you bother it excessively. Then it will defend itself. Kind of a no-duh, don't bother any animal excessively. If it can't find a source of electricity, it'll just die, or at least be at high risk, as it will no longer be able to move. And that is just electricity. It doesn't even eat electricity like some of our other electric types do, like Magnemite, meaning it has to balance both finding electricity and finding meals, which would be nigh on impossible for such a small creature were it not for its evolution Galvantula being a very kind caretaker of it. Galvantula themselves are also known to not be aggressive unless provoked. They are extremely caring towards Joltik and will aggressively work to assist it. It primarily feeds on the chicks of bird Pokemon that can't fly, otherwise waiting for prey to wander into their electrically charged silk web, in which case it will stun the victim for upwards of 3 days and 3 nights, as it consumes the prey at its leisure. And even if the prey doesn't get caught by a web or tries to escape, its front pedipalps, such a fun word to say, are said to be very strong and can be used to hold it down. And then, if you somehow manage to make one angry, it turns out that they attack in groups. So please, do not wander into the caves, do not go into Tardstone Cave and actively bother the giant spiders or the Joltik, or you will not make it to the other end. Now, they are scary on the surface, but once again, more Pokemon that are generally peaceful. An influx of them could absolutely decimate the bird population for the following year, since it is not actively going after fully grown bird Pokemon. But they say that if spiders were able to support a body that large without collapsing on itself, and they were able to maintain their numbers, that they would effectively be able to completely take over the Earth. Though this is more of a rumor that doesn't take into account a number of other factors, such as oxygen availability and how food scarcity would lower their numbers. Again, if you are bigger, yes, you might need more food, but then the planet cannot actually properly support you. This means that even in the Pokemon world, you have to subvert that. And in this case, despite having absolutely massive spiders that are just as big, if not bigger than cats and dogs, and are very effective predators, there are a number of other Pokemon that can keep them in check, and they also tend to not actively hunt down humans, and specifically tend to hunt for small birds, maybe other just general small mammals, with the occasional one being so large that it will hunt everything that it can. This in turn allows Galvantula and some of our other insects to serve as predators to birds that would otherwise not have predators in some areas. Durant just likes to eat leaves exclusively and stays within its home within its colony. They will gather in groups to fight back to protect their colony and their eggs, but will not pursue if you leave their nest. They're just looking to drive you out. Though if they're anything like real-life ants, which are said to lift up to 10 to 50 times its own weight at a minimum, this Chihuahua-sized, 72.8 pound, 33 kilogram Pokemon would be able to lift up a giraffe with ease. Yes, a giraffe. I just wanted to put in your head the idea or image of a Chihuahua lifting up a giraffe. And this is just a 1 foot tall ant doing that. And that's just one of them. They move and act together, so just don't go messing with their colony for your own sake, please. It is interesting to see that Durant do seem to typically live deep within giant mountains or caves, meaning that they have to venture pretty far to get their fill of leaves. This makes them actually a target for Heatmore, of course, which has specifically adapted alongside of them to be able to eat the Durant. There may be other Pokemon out there, maybe some Fire-type Pokemon, anything that just needs to get their fill and can break through that incredibly tough carapace that it does have. Now it's time to praise the sun with Larvesta and Volcarona. Even just by starting with Larvesta, it uses fire to scare predators and hunt for prey. You are not burning this bug down to ashes, as it controls the flames itself, allowing it to fly, cut through iron, and more as it reaches temperatures of 5,500 degrees Fahrenheit. This Pokemon was seen as a being that stole the sun, or otherwise described as an emissary of the sun. It constantly caused forest fires, which was a massive problem, though the two Pokemon prefer to live within warmer environments, such as within deserts or deep within volcanoes, where they can maintain their warmth better. Makes it fairly easy to ensure you don't accidentally find yourself being burned alive by them, thanks to any trespassing that you may do on their territory. Though you really don't want to approach this duo, especially as it evolves into Volcarona. odds are it will literally take your breath away, as Volcarona's scales will burn up all the oxygen in the area. It was said to be worshipped as a deity of the sun in colder areas, though I have a feeling that any rooms we find it in may also have some dead bodies. This is because if it just throws these scales around and you're in a closed room, the oxygen is eventually going to deplete and you're going to lose the strength to move and die, assuming you don't immediately realize that you are suffocating. And it just kind of throws these scales around, and I just, what is it? What is it about butterflies and moths within the Pokemon world scattering highly deadly scales at all times? Otherwise, if it weren't for its natural existence of being dangerous, we wouldn't have to worry about it. Again though, this is exactly why it is such a solitary creature, or one that lives in the most extreme environments. It has to be powerful enough to overcome any adversaries. And while they are said to not be biologically related, I will at least mention Slitherwing and Iron Moth are Pokemon that do resemble Volcarona here, said to be past and future Paradox forms, though there isn't a lot of detail regarding either of them, so we can just kind of move on. To close out Generation 5, we do have the ancient Pokemon brought back to life, Genesect. And while it isn't necessarily one that you would expect to see in the wild, it is a Pokemon that is thought to have been an apex predator of its time, even before it was technically enhanced via Team Plasma's efforts. This was likely during the Carboniferous period, where we would have a lot of the massive insects kind of flooping about due to their ability to process large amounts of oxygen, which, if humans were back then, we would die. We can't process oxygen like that. Now, with Genesect, it can fly, it can breathe in space, well, it can survive in space. It's intelligent, it still creates nests, which means that it does have some of its natural instincts as a part of it still, and they do have a hierarchy system with one as the leader, all while having that massive cannon, I need to stop saying massive, on its back in place of an Elytra. They can be a bit destructive thanks to their creators, but otherwise are not a Pokemon that we would ever really find in the wild. There's only one line of Pokemon that was added through the Kalos region, and that is the Scatterbug line, and they are also pretty friendly if you don't bother or pretty much touch them. In fact, they tend to eat poisonous plants that other Pokemon stay away from. This is how, through both Scatterbug and Spupa, they're able to create a black powder that, when you make physical contact with them, it will paralyze you, though that is primarily targeted towards any bird Pokemon that may try to eat them, as it will then attach to the target of that bird Pokemon, paralyze them, and allow our buggy friend to escape. So while protecting themselves and filling their stomachs, they're also helping ensure that poisonous weeds are kept in check and don't spread out too much. I kind of always imagine that they're eating poison ivy, even though poison ivy is more of a, oil that is what our bodies react to, less than a poison. Now, the difference with Spupa is that it now has a fur that it can bristle to keep Pokemon away or spray the poisonous black powder as it travels through fields and mountains while building up its energy for it to evolve. It otherwise inhabits the shadows of thickets, which are safe places for it to avoid predation by birds. When it evolves into Vivillon, we get a slew of patterns dependent upon the climate and topography of the environment in which it was born and lives in, totaling out to 20 separate and beautiful forms. All 20, unfortunately, scatter colorful scales that are toxic. I don't know what I was expecting when all it did was eat poisonous plants anyhow in order for it to live and evolve. So, whatever, just don't eat or breathe rather near moths and butterflies in the Pokemon world, I suppose. I guess I could be happy about it because they're so easy to eat in our world. Like, we're talking very defenseless creatures all in all, with their only ability to defend themselves often being just having, let's say, forms of mimicry on their wings to scare away any potential predators. So I guess it is kind of nice, now that I think about it, to see butterflies and moths actually having ways to defend themselves through their scales, which they need anyhow. We are now in Alola, and luckily I recently covered the complete ecosystem of Alola just in this past week. So this is fairly fresh to me, and if you haven't checked that out, you should absolutely go check that ecology video. But Our first buggy friends here are the ones we find in the Grubbin line. They're fairly docile as long as you don't mess with Grubbin and Charjabug, who just want to eat sap and hummus, and just be overall friendly, as even people bring Charjabug with them as generators for houses or camping trips. The only time this Pokemon line is even remotely threatening is when it does finally evolve into Vikavolt and are really only a danger to birds. This is because Vikavolt will blast birds out of the sky after everything that they did to its previous forms. Vikavolt will even carry Charjabug as an extra source of electricity, a battery really, unless the dogfight in the air gets a little too wild, in which case it drops the Pokemon off and continues the aerial combat alone. These are great decomposer Pokemon that will eventually grow to keep aggressive bird Pokemon populations in check, which there are a lot of birds in Alola. And how could you not love Beep Beep the Charjabug? They're adorable, so S+ in my books. Cutiefly and Ribbon are incredibly effective pollinators. If they die, the flowers in Alola are gone. Cutiefly having an ability to be able to see blooming flowers full of pollen and nectar that it can then consume. Every once in a while, it'll mistake and stab a human or other Pokemon if their emotions are strong, as it identifies these blooming flowers through their auras, which feels like it implies that plants are confirmed to have emotion in the Pokemon world, which is potentially true in the real world. They're doing studies on all of that, and I've talked about that in another video of mine. Though, again, I digress. Once it does evolve into Ribbon Bee, it creates pollen puffs, which it can use for food, or even to relieve tiredness in people or Pokemon, or just generally cheer other people up like the adorable little medic cheerleader that it is. The pollen puffs are even sold as nutritious supplements, and ultimately this duo are incredibly friendly with other people and Pokemon, which we are very lucky considering these bad boys are everywhere, and considering the region we find them in, they are likely very high in numbers. Also recently learned that they're based on the bee fly, which while it is a fly, it does feed on nectar and pollen and is such an incredibly cute and very small insect, while being very visually similar to Cutiefly itself, or I guess Cutiefly is very visually similar to the bee fly, which makes perfect sense as per its inspiration. The real potential threats within the insect category are revealed once more when we look at Dewpider and Araquanid. While these diving bell spiders are fairly harmless to us as a Dewpider, Araquanid is a 5'11" beast of a Pokemon, because Dewpider might drown a Pokemon or two, sticking to fish and other small bug Pokemon. Araquanid has a bubble helmet durable enough to bludgeon foes with, knock them out, drown them, and even store them away for food if they've had their fill for the day. They will hunt Wishy-Washy, they will hunt down any other bug Pokemon in the area, and if desperate, I would not be surprised to find it hunting down people, if not at least small mammals. Your only solace from the fear that this thing induces is that you will at least be unconscious before it begins to rip you apart with its jaws. It's an essential Pokemon, do not get me wrong, because without it, Wishy-Washy would always be able to form schools that are more terrifying and powerful than Gyarados, as per their lore. But the last thing I want to encounter is Mama Araquanid and her swarm of Dewpider babies, ready to feast upon me and my Pokemon, so please stay very far away. At least they tend to stick to larger ponds, but not full-on oceans. Wimpod is said to just be nature's cleaner as per Pokemon standards, and it typically stays away from others while often finding itself in the company of its evolution Golisopod. So if you would dare to mess with Wimpod, know that Mama Isopod isn't very far away. In fact, Golisopod is said to have a shell as tough as diamonds, retractable claws that can cleave seawater in two, is skillful in battle, and is willing to do anything to win a fight. These things will slice you up like the ronin-poly that they are, and if you still manage to get close to it and survive, it will grapple you and dig at you with its inner claws that it has close to its chest in order to finish you off. It will often fight with Grapple-Locked as they are natural predators to each other, and to the victor again goes the spoils. It is a whopping height of 6'7", weighing in at 238 pounds. That thing could claw my eyes out just standing straight up with where those claws, or rather arms, are placed. And those aren't even actually arms, they're legs, meaning it could probably scuttle around at higher speeds if it got down on all of its legs. Isopods are pretty dope all in all. They're said to be, you know, one of the few creatures that really tried their hardest to get from water to land and kind of half succeeded in comparison to many of our other insects, as these will often find themselves under rocks or wood. That's why I called wood lice in terms of the roly-polies that you might be aware of, and just generally moist environments, as they can't stay in overly warm or hot environments without drying out because they haven't developed a coating to themselves like how spiders have, for example. I might be slightly misquoting, by all means. I just recently started reading Silent Earth from Dave Goulson. I have the book literally right next to me, and it's all about averting the insect apocalypse because, unfortunately, there's some information regarding insects that have caused a rapid decline over the many years. To keep safe from these honestly wonderful isopods, I just recommend not challenging them or invading their territory without permission. Otherwise, they're just big cleaners that will also hunt down some other Pokemon. To close out Alola, the next two are technically not common, but at the same point, both Buzzwole and Pheromosa have appeared from Ultra Space. Buzzwole is known to be incredibly common in the Ultra Jungle, which is where it hails from. When the volcano erupts while we are there, swarms of these buff mosquitoes come flying around. Their instinct is to simply drain other creatures of energy rather than blood, which in turn results in a chemical reaction within their bodies and allows them to turn said energy into pure muscle, making them even stronger. They're absolutely my favorite Ultra Beast, especially with how showboaty they can be, while also flexing to try and communicate with others. They can take a hit, give one two, and they also have a proboscis harder than diamond, with a singular punch being able to destroy a dump truck. They're powerful and just overall fun, even if they're just a little bit scary. Honestly, Ultra Beasts in general are scary, though we don't truly understand how they've adapted to become such creatures and how they really fit into a proper, natural, complete ecosystem. So it feels unfair to be so afraid of them because they're just multiversal invasive species that didn't even choose to come to our world and are trying to survive as best they can. As for Pheromosa, she serves as a parallel, maybe more of a foil to Buzzwole or foil to each other, especially as the two are the opposites, one existing in one game and one existing in the other. Now, Pheromosa does reside in Ultra Desert, a place beaten down by the harsh sun and being a vast, empty expanse. This Ultra Beast's speed may be thanks to this environment, as it is said to move faster than lightning, which I would dare say is responsible for the crystalline structures we find in the desert, despite not witnessing a storm during our time there. Though Pheromosa is more than just fast, it is intelligent and strong for that matter, while also being a creature that has a disdain for touching anything in our world, as it might see it as dirty. Again, another Pokemon that even if we did encounter it, it isn't outwardly aggressive unless we get in its way. Though, even when it had the opportunity to attack Hala after defeating his Pokemon, it didn't attack him directly and was in fact cordial in how it carried itself, which is a little bit of a relief. Also, the reason why Pheromosa is white in color could be in reference to how cockroaches can look after they molt, becoming a just absolute pure white in color. And while I am personally afraid of cockroaches, I'll smash them on sight. I do not like the look of them. I can appreciate that. Also, hissing cockroaches are kind of dope, I will admit. I had a professor in college that had a tank of them, and during my times as just studying water and measuring water quality over the course of 2 summers in my internship, which was phenomenal, I just would often walk over to the hissing cockroaches, and even if you just blew air on them, they would just, like full on hiss, which again, while creepy, I wanted to try and ease my own discomfort by exposing myself to their presence more often, which kind of worked. Let's jump into Generation 8 now. Blipbug is what you get when you combine nerdiness with insects. In fact, it is often said, though what scientific evidence there is up to question, that those with a higher intelligence often are found to be more interested in etymology or the study of insects in general, which I assume is where the design of this wide-eyed bug may come from. It's even said to be very smart, very weak, and just constantly collect information while also often being found in gardens. It just has a very stereotypical Poindexter type design. Even as it evolves into Dottler, sure, it gets a shell of sorts, but that shell just assists with helping it see its environment. Meanwhile, it uses psychic power to protect itself and gather more info about its habitat before it evolves. Its evolution here said to be a result of hiding in its shell without food or water, which unlocked its psychic abilities, similar to how fasting, meditation, and psychic abilities are said to be related. In its final form, it's not said to eat anything. It flies using its psychic power instead of its wings most of the time. It just continues to survey its surroundings even more with psychic power that can stretch to over 6 miles or 10 kilometers away. It's just famously known for its intelligence, and while it seems harmless, this is the one time I decided to peek in at a Pokemon's Gigantamax form and saw that if it were to use all of its power, it could control the minds of every living creature in its vicinity. So cool! Hopefully that never happens, and it's just satisfied with being a very intelligent friend. Welcome in more aggressive centipedes with Sizzlipede and Centiskorch. The 2-foot-long centipede likes to wrap around its prey and then cook it alive by heating up. Great! It and its evolved form generate heat using the flammable gas stored within its body, and once the prey is well done, it voraciously nibbles at them piece by piece until the last morsel. It cooks its prey alive. Even if that is somehow not enough for you to want to stay very far away, allow us to speak on Centiskorch now. Coming in at 3 meters and 264 pounds, Centiskorch is known as a violent and belligerent creature, attacking anything that comes near it. First, it warms up its stomach, then body slams whatever has invoked its ire, described to be similar to a searing whip, as it then constricts around your body with the full ungodly heat of 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit or 815 degrees Celsius. We are fortunate as a species that this is a rare encounter in the wild, something that only exists currently to our knowledge within the Giant's Foot of Galar. Otherwise, it's only in max raid dens, and I don't even want to talk about its Gigantamax form. I don't even want to think about it. I'll explore Dynamax and Gigantamax in their own video one day, and something that kind of clicked in my head while talking about this now is the reason why it's probably cooking its food well done, almost to the point of congratulations, if you would, that it's probably needing to replicate charcoal in a sense, that maybe when it's eating it, it is then using any of the carbon in the body to fuel itself further while also feeding its stomach. It's an interesting little thing going on here. But let's move on, because I've thought enough about centipedes, and I don't really want to find out if I'm more scared of this thing or Scolipede, which I'm thinking it's this thing because I'd rather not get cooked alive. At least we get to close Galar, though, with a friend in the form of the ice-eating Snom. That's it. That's all Snom does. It eats ice and snow endlessly until it can evolve into Frostmoth. And as long as you don't desecrate the fields and mountains in which it resides, it'll be your friend. You still don't want to touch its wings because they have a temperature of negative 290 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 180 degrees Celsius, which, by the way, is colder than the coldest day in Antarctica, which was negative 128 degrees Fahrenheit and 89 degrees or negative 89 degrees Celsius, meaning that Frostmoth is twice as cold. And then it will create entire blizzards to chase away anyone who does dare to harm its environment. Though, at least it only seems to drink clean meltwater without seeming to eat anything. So, it's still a nice friend that is likely protecting other friendly Pokemon in the area. On to our last region as we have flown on over to Paldea, allowing us to talk first about the first insect duo here, which is really just arachnids, by the way, as we get to talk about Tarantula and Spidops. I feel like I was incredibly redundant there. I apologize. Both of these Pokemon, though, just act as normal spiders would. Tarantula hanging from threads on tree branches, and Spidops being an ambush predator that will silently move around thanks to its threads and smother its prey while striking before there's time for it to react. It sets traps, sticks to trees, keeps its Pokemon forms safe, and is rivals with Scyther, who can't break its threads. And while it is a meter tall, it doesn't seem to pose a threat as long as you aren't an intruder. Now, to be entirely fair, our Pokemon that we do find here in Paldea are going to be more speculative in terms of our conclusions because we only have game info, and not years of info from other forms of media that have helped fill out their personalities, their place in the world, their numbers that they exist in, and how they interact. But with Nimble and Lokix being based on locusts, we could at least imagine their population being fairly high. We find that Nimble can jump upwards of 10 meters in the air, allowing it to easily dodge and deal damage to foes, while Lokix itself tends to only enter what we call showdown mode when it needs to, which is when it needs to go all out in a battle stance to quickly and efficiently incapacitate enemies, though it can't do this very often or very long at all, as it puts a huge strain on its body. Otherwise, their information states nothing about being territorial or aggressive, so maybe just don't bother it and you won't eat the ground faster than you can blink. And to finalize our Bug-type Pokemon, we have another friendly little Pokemon in the form of Ralor and Rabsca, who don't even pose a threat to us, as they concentrate on making their little mud ball, which in real life, if they were actual dung beetles, they would just be fecal matter, in which that, just like real life dung beetles do, they would lay their eggs in, which is what it does and allows it to evolve into Rabsca as it then matures. From there, Rabsca just simply begins the constant cycle of escaping death, as it is reborn inside of the ball that it carries with it, that ball being said to contain its true form. This is all because it's a reference to the idea of the immortal scarab and the mythology behind that. But with that, that does officially clear all of our bug Pokemon in what I'm going to consider to be a palate cleanser before the next video subject. And in all reality, while we have some very aggressive and dangerous outliers, they are by all means no different from what we would find in real life in terms of how dangerous some creatures become thanks to their environments. Otherwise, many of our insectoid or arachnid or isopod, arthropod related Pokemon are essential to every single region that they reside in. They decompose litter, they serve as food, they pollinate, and they even help control the population of other aggressive creatures that may exist within their own extreme microclimates. So despite our own potential thoughts and immediate knee-jerk reaction to fear insects, bug Pokemon are just as necessary as our real-life insects are. Though I guarantee that through sheer numbers and their power, they could absolutely take over the world if they weren't content in their habitats. I will note now, if you want a really good read that I've started getting into regarding insects, start reading this book, Silent Earth, Averting the Insect Apocalypse by Dave Goulson. The reason why I recommend it is because he was inspired by Rachel Carson, who wrote Silent Spring, and is one of the biggest reasons why we understand that DEET is incredibly dangerous, because otherwise people were spraying themselves with DEET all over the place, literally almost bathing in it, which was ultimately through human actions, killing birds, and so on and so forth. Now, it does also talk about how insect populations have unfortunately dipped upwards of 75% over the last couple years, and I know I've been to seminars that have shown that insects' body mass have dropped exponentially as well. So take care of insects, do what you can, plant flowers, help our pollinators, you name it. They are so incredibly essential in the real world as well. Though, I will say now, as I step away and truly close out our video, the next video I actually let members of the channel help vote on, and that is Time Criminals, Pokemon characters that have manipulated time, which will explore how Turo, Sada, Volo, Bill, Ash and many others manipulated time and broke the laws of reality for their own wants and desires. So that'll be the next video. I'm excited. I hope you are too. And again, thank you so much for watching. Again, make sure that you do subscribe, share the channel with others, share this video with others, join the Discord community, and comment. Say your thoughts, share your thoughts, tell me some bug facts. That sounds awesome. I love when my community teaches me the same as I can teach you guys with what I research and learn. And if you can, consider becoming a member for as little as $3 a month, as that can make a massive difference and help fund projects or even just general videos with the channel, since YouTube ad revenue is not reliable. With that then, as always, before we go, let's shout out all of our members. Thanks to all of our members of the channel, starting with the Gods of Hope, Begins, Heals for Life, and Vanny Lemon, followed up by all of our champions, Andrew Merchant, Isco, Elizabeth, Lovacon, Joshua, Biggins, Wilson, then all of our Knights of the Court, Crumbo, Fix My Nitrogen, Dylan Perrine, Double Pile, Annie Stone, Allen, Heals for Life, and Vanny Lemon. Then all of our Wanderers, Edward Kasowski, Puddin Fox, MN Ranger, Hawthorne, Andrew Tyson, Teshima, Zanzibar, Chef in a Bottle, Justin Green, JV Green, Minnie the Mad Minnie, Tavis Lamb, Venica Hogs, Ben Dover, The Sporty Yamper, Evil Chad, Max Supreme, Octo Shade, Woomy, Charles Reed, Rose the Pink Haired Saiyan, Tyler, Darius Regan, Silver Lazarus, Supporty Boy, DPM, Pander, Nerders, Freeberg, Lost Mysterious, Offhand Kai, Kuchak 123, Hag, Adi Kadabra, Bach 1000, KO 23, Pre-Ignite, a Cantor, Artie, Shiny Blastoise 52, Krill, Final Fantasy 14, Matt S, Marco Man, Colin Moore, Kieran Trick, Crawlin Crow, Zyplum, Plush Skits, Tommy DeBroyer, Nate Conley, Sophie Sabs 13, Wise Tom York, Score Blaze, Salat Slime, Denner all over, Quinn, Jude, Ron Ellis, Zenko, Sweatsheet, Speed Noob, Tana, Pat, Ravi, Ramsey, Sardonics, 8-Bit Ducky, Poke, Odin, Tracker, Soylent Bean, Chris Wills, Great Lakes, Featherco, Nick Stars, Evan Karasu, Lenore Wolf 312, Iana, Trappy, Starbreed, Foster Damon, Zane, Edom, Black Air Force, Energy, Just Another Vegan on YouTube, Sci-Fi Gaming, Red Wolf Eagle 13, Story Song, Ezo, Curitin, Whimsical Stray, Unknown, Ooh, Lazy Link 17, Metiel, A Cooler 1, Axel, Bad Choices Made, The Very Average Gamer, A-Town, Level 99 Boss, Bitter D, Dustron Gaming, King Pine, Blinded Bob, Happy Panda Panda, Zap, Tempest Zeta, Dre Twaster, B10 TS, Jose Colado, Pokefan Girl 23, Michael Gibbons, Konasuga, Guya Libro, Cubicularis, Dalton Queen, Jers, Brian Millie, Julian Warner, Dice, Carby, Abdullah, Lottie, Ren, Generic White Man Name, Jack of the Frost, Righteous Ivy, Ruby, Addie C, Jacob Square, DJ Monk 23, Squidwater, Rye Smith, Gamer Bad Dragonite, Just JM, Vanny Samaru, Star S, MD with a Horse, Hey Bill Yeet, Micah Gaming, Micah 626 Gaming, Muse, Arwell, Talumio, Gwendolyn, Eastgander 072, Andrew Frost, Speak Anonymous, Summon, Slav, Knock, Nguyen, Ian Ray, Big and C9, whatever this is, Corner of the Cops, Scott, Carlisle, Heather Wiseman, Dylan Peters, and Malachi Burkhart. Thank you all for being members and supporting the channel. If you would like to hear your name and get a number of different perks to help support the channel, please do consider becoming a member and maybe even ruin my ability to say all these names so fast before the Heart Gold and credits would end. With that then, as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't know they're going to do, they're going to. Please be next to each other. I love you. I'll see you next time. Bye.